African morning. Now, the Banking Services Ombud is worried that more people may default on loan agreements and repayments. High inflation, increasing interest rates and petrol prices have created the perfect storm for consumers. South Africans, on average, are borrowing just to make ends meet. The Ombud is urging consumers to seek assistance from credit providers rather than using loan sharks. Let's speak to the Ombud Reana Stenyn, joining us now to take this conversation forward. Reana, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. I mean, just paint us that picture. How bad is it for consumers, particularly when it comes to repaying back their loans due to, obviously, these inflation rates?
Well, I think anybody can guess that things are not going very well for consumers. I think the reason why we put out the press release is because we fear for what's going to happen in the coming months. People are already claiming that they are stressed. We hear that people, they cannot afford to drive to work, especially after COVID, they were at home. And now, they don't have money in their budget to drive to work anymore. So things are definitely not looking up for consumers. And I think the reason why we want to warn consumers is that they shouldn't leave it till it's too late, because that's what we see. We see those problems when it's already too late, when there's a judgment, when the bank doesn't want to help you anymore because you haven't been paying them for the past year. And that is why I think there's some things that people can do as long as they take action proactively and timelessly.
Are you seeing that even with the cash-strapped consumer and also, they're struggling with repaying their loans, that they still go back to loan sharks? I suppose some often illegal, loan sharks, some unregistered, just to try and keep up with not only, cost of living, their livelihoods, but also to repay back some of the loans that they've defaulted on.
Most definitely. I think if employers took the time to investigate what's happening to their employees, especially our government institutions, those employees are all cash-strapped and they all have loans with loan sharks. And of course, once you get into that, it's a vicious cycle, because at the end of the month, you simply do not have the money to repay the loan shark, and you borrow again just to repay that previous month. So it gets you into a debt spiral, and sometimes you get the second loan to pay back the first loan, and the third and the fourth. And even if it's not, and there's payroll deductions also going to these loan sharks. And then, even other private companies, if you look at what is happening to the consumers, and if you had to ask them to genuinely, sort of disclose the income and expenses, I think employers will be shocked to see that their employees cannot afford to live month to month. They're borrowing, and that is getting them into a debt spiral, and with rising costs. I mean, that's not a good picture. So we fear that in the next year, there are going to be so many people defaulting on their loans. And that, of course, is terrible, because then it's judgments and you list it on the credit bureau. And that's not a good picture. So we want to try and prevent that.
Yeah, I was about to ask exactly that, Reana, to say, what about credit scoring, and what would it mean then for future borrowing, potential, and also banks? I mean, if more South Africans are listed on credit bureau for defaults, for judgments, surely it means that the banks as well cannot, offer, those who are looking to borrow some money.
Correct, and then it's too late, because, in terms of the National Credit Act, the bank does have to look at your credit bureau records. They have to look at your past history. And if there are bad debts and unpaid debts, they're not allowed to give you more debt, because then it will be reckless lending. And you're now trying to get yourself out of this cycle. So the only thing that people really should be doing is to try and plan now. If they see they're cash strapped now, what is going to happen in 3 months and 5 months with additional interest rate hikes, with petrol going up, electricity going up? So people need to start planning now and maybe consolidate their loans, maybe go and ask for loan extensions. If you're still a client in good standing, those are options to you. If you have not been paying for a few months, those options, are no longer available. Once you have a judgment, I mean, it's really too late. And as I say, unfortunately, in our office, where we only deal with the complaints against banks who doesn't want to be helpful, that's what we see. And we often think to ourselves, if only they spoke up earlier, before there was a problem.
Yeah, and I suppose give us a context on that, Reana, because oftentimes the banks may look like the bad guys here, as if they don't want to assist consumers when they are in a tight spot. So what process do banks usually follow when it comes to, assisting with loans, or perhaps when you default on a loan, what processes are there for you to follow with the bank that perhaps consumers may not be aware of? That could be helpful right now, before then finding themselves with the judgment and not being able to actually be creditworthy.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is start with the planning.
Okay.
Look at the budget, look at the actual obligations, and see where you're going to run into trouble and what you can do to cut down on your monthly expenses. And if one of those things is that you need to cut down on your debit order payments because your debit orders are not going to go through, or alternatively, you don't have, for example, money for food or petrol to go to work, then you need to go and contact your credit provider. And if it's the banks, you need to go and sit with them and be honest and disclose the problem that you are facing, and together work out a plan how to address that. And a plan could be to extend the loans. And different banks offer different options for different clients. And as I say, if you're still a client in good standing, they are definitely more likely to assist you than a person that has been trying to run away, not paying their debts, not answering phone calls. So proactively go and see them, say, these are my debts, I cannot afford them anymore. What can we do? You can, of course, extend loans. You can get consolidation loans. You can sell your assets, like a fixed asset, with the bank's assistance. You can maybe sell the house if it's, like a real crisis, and they will assist you so that you can repay that debt and not get into a judgment situation.
Well, I appreciate, of course, this advice definitely will be coming in handy for those South Africans who need assistance financially right now. But thank you so much, Reana. Stressing planning is quite important, communicating with the bank, having that relationship, an open conversation about assisting you before it's too late. Ombud for Banking Services, Reana Stenyn, thank you so much for your time.